Hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. My guest this week is Heather Gerst. She's a digestive doctor, and we talked about everything from acid reflux to colonoscopies to being allergic to milk to all kinds of stuff. And I enjoyed the conversation because I like to know about my body and I like to be able to make it optimal. And Heather cares. Heather is one of great person, and I'm lucky I got to meet her. And I'm also lucky that I get to talk to these people, these medical people, and ask questions that you know I people are afraid of. And I want to be transparent. I want people to, if I can start a conversation about, I've never done a colonoscopy, and Heather reiterated that I need to. So that's what I'm going to do. And the other thing about this episode was, there's a lot of people in the last few weeks that have had colon cancer or other things, so that's what talked me into it too. And when we get to the end of the episode, I lost 20 minutes of it, and I was just getting into talking about who Heather was as other than just the doctor stuff. And we're going to have her on again and we'll talk about that stuff too. So I just wanted to say, if you get an opportunity, share this episode, give us a review, and subscribe to the Don't Die Rusty podcast. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this next episode of the Don't Die Rusty podcast with Heather Gerst. Well, hello, Don't Die Rusty Nation. This is going to be a wonderful conversation tonight because I have Heather Gerst here, the other half of Mike Gerst here that I've done with Prep 'em Wild. And Heather is she said it, she told me she's I'm going to say a digestive doctor because, I don't want to flub everything up. But the interesting thing is I'm interested in this digestive stuff too, and it is amazing how in the last few years I will say that I've been really, really, really interested in what I eat and how my body works. So Heather, tell us a little bit about what you do so I can start asking you questions. And I want to say thank you for being here because you've reached out before, and we since talking to Mike, and it seems like we become like we haven't met each other in person, but we're friends now.
Yep, absolutely. And thankful to be talking to you today. I was really looking forward to this. And Mike and I are looking forward to the time that we get to come out and visit you and, meet you in person. But your posts have been inspirational and positive and uplifting for me on a daily basis. So I was thrilled to get to talk to you today. And I'm very passionate about what I do. We were talking earlier before the recording started. I wanted to be a digestive doctor since I was a teenager. I started shadowing a local digestive doctor, a gastroenterologist in my hometown when I was in high school. And I just always was fascinated with how the digestive system worked. I like to think I have a good sense of humor, and sometimes things that have to do with your digestive system kind of take, being pretty humble and being able to talk about that and have a little bit of a sense of humor with it. And I kind of felt like there's a real niche for that in that field with patients, having someone that they're comfortable talking with about that. So I take care of all things digestion. I'm a physician who specializes in everything from this hole to this hole, right? And everything in between. So your
Well,
digestive system, the GI tract is a lumen, and then outside of the actual lumen or the plumbing, there's also other organs involved with that digestion process that I take care of. So liver, pancreas, gallbladder, those sort of things are all encompassed in my field. And I've been doing this for 20 years.
holy moly,
Never gets
that's a
old.
lot. Well, I bet you
Nah,
see a lot of different things.
I do. A lot of different things, very interesting things, in my 20-year span. Some sad things, obviously, as well, because, along with that field, obviously comes cancer diagnoses. So I'm pretty passionate about educating patients on cancer screening when it comes to that. But I've obviously also really made a lot of great relationships with my patients over the years. I enjoy clinic and that developing that patient rapport. And I've been fortunate enough and pretty honored to take care of a lot of great people in my career. So
Well, I have a whole list of things, but this is interesting here. We'll start with what you just talked about then, because you're talking to a guy that is. I'm not scared of a lot. I don't know if I'm scared. It's just that I just don't know, I guess, because I have never ever had a colonoscopy, ever,
Rick.
never.
Rick. Well, then
How
my
do you?
goal is to convince you before this podcast discussion is over today that you need one. You need one.
You know,
Maybe that's
I
why God brought me into your path.
could have, because it's one of those things I keep on putting off. I say, if my blood work says I'm good, I don't think I need one, and I I have this fear. And I hate to tell people this because I always tell people not to fear things, and then I'm the guy that
Yeah.
has a fear of being in that situation.
So, I do, various speaking events on behalf of the hospital, and for Colon Cancer Awareness Month, that sort of thing. It's common that people put this off either because of fear or just embarrassment, or lack of knowledge. So unfortunately, patients will tell me, listen, doc, I don't have any problems down there. Therefore, I'm good. I don't need a colonoscopy. But really, the number one symptom of colon cancer is no symptom at all. That's what's scary about it. These colon cancer starts in the form of these little polyps. They're small growths that occur on the lining of the colon, and especially on the right side of the colon, the stool is still liquid as it empties in from the small bowel into the large bowel. And that liquid stool can pass over these little polyps. They can continue to grow and get very big, unbeknownst to patients, and you would never have a clue that they're in there, getting bigger and then spreading to more dangerous stages. That's why colonoscopies are so important, because we have the ability to go in and find these polyps before they ever have a chance to turn into cancer, or to catch them in an early stage. Colon cancer is one of the cancers that's preventable, treatable, and beatable if you find it early. And I always tell my patients, we don't have that kind of technology for all the other cancers in the body, so take advantage of it, right? No one's cracking open your skull to look for little small growths that are,
Yeah.
precursors to brain cancer. And, no one's cutting you open to look for small growths in the pancreas. And there's so many cancers that we don't have that kind of technology for. But again, the colon's like a long pipe, right? It's a lumen, and we have the ability to go in with a scope and take out these little polyps and kind of weed the garden, if you will, and take these out before they ever have a chance to turn into anything concerning. So do you think your fear is anesthesia? Is your fear perforation, or like the scope kind of poking through something? Do you just not want someone looking at your behind?
That See, when you got done, when you said, I would say more embarrassment than fear, because I just, being naked in front of people that are, I don't know.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff probably is more of a. I'm probably more shy in that aspect, but it's funny that I mean, it's not funny that we're talking about this, but then you talk about Vanderbeek, who just died.
Yeah.
Is it James Vanderbeek? I think.
Yep.
Yeah, and he had colon cancer, and that one struck me a little bit harder, especially since I was going to be talking to you and I knew this, and I'm going, maybe I would feel more comfortable if I'm talking to Heather and she will tell me, because here's the deal. You go to a doctor, you go to your general, and I don't get to, you're in 5 minutes, out 5 minutes, and you don't really get to talk about
Yes.
things.
Yep. And unfortunately, what we in the gastroenterology field see is that because of that lack of time with a primary care physician to really answer patients' detailed questions in regard to colon cancer screening, oftentimes the primary care physicians will just choose the path of least resistance or whatever thing they can order first. So what gets offered to patients and what they very quickly hit on or take are these little stool tests, right? They send you these little cards, you smear some poop on them, and you send them away in the mail. And then they send you a letter that either says it's positive or negative. Those are the ones that are the sad cases for me, because those tests have a lot of false positives, but even more concerning are the false negatives. So let's say someone used like, well, I really don't want the awkwardness or the embarrassment of a colonoscopy, but I'll just do one of these little stool kits. You send it away, they send you a letter that says it's negative, you think that you're all good. Maybe 6 months from then or a year from then, you start having a change in your bowel habits, or you notice some blood in your stools. Something is different that then leads you to someone like me, a specialist. Then we do a colonoscopy and we find an advanced cancer that we otherwise could have caught in an early stage if you just would have had the gold standard test, which is a colonoscopy, and not one of these stool tests. So I think that primary care physicians are so limited with their time that when patients start asking a lot of questions about the details of what goes into having a colonoscopy, the prep, how long it takes, that sort of thing, that's where I think they just kind of take the path of least resistance or a quicker choice. And a lot of these patients get a different option for colon cancer screening that's not the best option. Statistically, physicians and physicians' family members will get a colonoscopy for colon cancer screening, not these stool tests. And that says a lot. I always try to treat my patients how I would my family members. So, I will tell patients, these are my recommendations. And if you were my mom or you were my brother, you were my husband, this is the test you would be getting. So that they have the confidence that I think that's the best test, because that's how I would treat it if it was my family member.
Well, here's the deal. I would have to get a colonoscopy because I'm not going to play with poop. I can tell you that right now.
Oh, come on, it's fun.
I mean, I'm not going to, poop in a box and send it away to somebody,
Yeah.
This guy ate corn that day or whatever, that ain't going to happen.
No, the colonoscopy is really, and it's not, all patients think that their backside is unique, right? Or, they don't want anyone to see it. No offense, but everybody has a butt, right?
Yeah.
And really, when you're on the exam table for a colonoscopy, so, you're laying on your left-hand side, and you are given anesthesia for the procedure. So you are asleep for the procedure. You don't remember that you had it done. And when an endoscopist is doing the procedure, once the scope is inserted, that scope has a camera on the end of it. And really what they're looking at is the screen above them to navigate through your colon. So their eyes are no longer fixed on your backside. It's fixed on the screen, and then they're able to navigate through the whole colon and get a very clear look at it there. So,
Well, maybe I'll have to get one, and then before I did that, I'll get a "Don't Die Rusty" tattoo on my butt, so it'd be just a little bit different.
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe wherever you go get it done, I can convince them to broadcast it. Maybe we could do like a "Don't Die Rusty" broadcast from your colonoscopy.
There you go. Well, if it would save somebody's life and then probably save mine, I would do it.
Yeah.
So
really,
yeah.
the prep for the colonoscopy, the day before, you're on all clear liquids, and you have to drink a laxative solution that will flush all the stool from the colon to cleanse the colon, so that we can see when we get in there, right? So we can see where we're going, and so that we don't miss anything in the colon. That's really the most inconvenient part, because you do spend some time in the bathroom that day, cleaning out. And oftentimes that's what patients will complain about the most. They don't even remember that they had the procedure. Oftentimes, people are given propofol. It's like the best sleep ever. They wake up and they say, "Are we going to do this?" And the endoscopist says it's done. It's the prep that really is the most inconvenient part. But for one day of spending some time in the bathroom and getting all cleaned out, boy, that's not much of a price to pay. to possibly save your life, or that get that important preventative test. So,
Well, how many people sit and scroll anyway?
right. Yeah. I mean, I can think of so many activities that you can do while you're on the toilet cleaning up. Trust me. And if I convince you to get one, I'm going to send you so many good memes on the day of your prep just to keep your spirits up. I'll give you all the tricks of the trade on how to get through that prep. So,
Well, because it's interesting. In about, I think it's 2 weeks. About 2 weeks. I have my my annual physical for insurance. And that's when they always, for the last, I think it's the last 5 years, they've been saying you need to do this, and it'd get to the time, and I put it off, and I'd put it off, and put it off,
yeah.
because I just go, so talking to you, making me a little more comfortable here, it helps
Well,
out.
we you know, decades ago, we really thought that the highest risk for developing colon cancer was over the age of 50. It was kind of in that older age group. And that's really when we started doing screening colonoscopies on patients who didn't have a family history, or they weren't high risk, right? But now what we know is colon cancer is on the rise in the younger generation. So your 18 to 49-year-olds is really where we've seen, a drastic increase in colon cancer. And so now we've dropped the medical societies have dropped the screening age to 45 so that we can start to pick these up sooner, in these younger patients where we really have a chance to make a difference, and extend their life. We think that increase in that younger generation now is because of more sedentary lifestyle, obesity, right? Diabetes, diets that are fast food and highly processed foods. All of that plays into what we think is this increased risk and rise in this younger generation. So, yeah, the screening age has dropped to 45. And so the current rates now is that your risk of colon cancer is 1 in 20.
Really?
Average, and that's an average risk. So it's 1 in 20, and screening age is 45. If you have a first degree relative, like, mom, dad, brother, sister with colon cancer, then your risk is, 4 to 5 times greater. And then you should have your first colonoscopy 10 years sooner than when your relative was diagnosed. So if you have a family member that was diagnosed at 50, you really should get your first colonoscopy at age 40, to really get ahead of the game.
Oh, and I'm 58. That's crazy.
You have escaped this for too long, my friend.
Holy mo! Well, I'm going to be 58. I'll say in about a month and a month. Ain't that crazy? Gee, many cripes. So,
Flies by,
but
huh?
yeah, but I think, like you said, there was a time I wasn't. I don't think I've ever been sedentary, but because I keep on moving, and I will say in the last year, since I went to, I have to say, I went and saw a functional doctor, and I started eating differently, and that's helped me out a ton too. And she's helped me out on other things. But this is going to be fun getting into the food part too. But I want to, it must be because I'm gonna preface this right now because of what I follow and what I watch, maybe on social media. But this oregano oil and trying to get the parasites out, and I talked to a friend today because this is funny in the mushroom. Well, I can't remember the mushroom stuff but we were talking to each other, and I said I was going to be talking to you, and she said you can ask her if I can have a tapeworm because all these fearful things like the oregano oil, and she's saying I have these cravings and all the like this fearful media trying to get you to buy something, and that's what we're
Yeah.
wondering. You know what I mean? Because I said, because I crave chocolate here. I mean, we were talking about this. We crave chocolate every once in a while. I'm tired, and all these things that they're putting out there, and it's like, Do we really need this stuff? Or can you answer that question? Or if you can't, then
Yeah.
that's fine.
Nope. Yeah. So what I will preface the discussion on the oregano oil and on the mushroom stuff first is an explanation of why I would be against those types of products. So, first of all, I think what a lot of people who don't have a medical education background, they don't understand is that all drugs that you take into your body, so prescription drugs, herbals, vitamins, supplements, everything that you take in, basically 90% of that has to be metabolized through your liver. So you take these, these pills or these supplements in, immediately has to go to the liver to be metabolized into its active compound. The liver has four main pathways or isoenzymes that it uses to break those down. And depending on what the drug or the supplement is, depends on which one of those isoenzymes gets utilized to then break that down. When a prescription drug gets cleared by the FDA, there's rigorous testing done to determine exactly which pathway through the liver that uses. And therefore, we know how it could interact with other medications, supplements, foods, etc., so that there's no dangerous interactions between the drug that you're taking or the supplement you're taking and anything else. The problem with these supplements is that they're not FDA regulated. So they don't have all of that rigorous testing done, and there's not much known about exactly how they get metabolized and how they could interfere with others. Typically, what will happen is all drugs that go through are either inhibitors of these CYP450 isoenzymes, or they may be rapid metabolizers of them. So, what that means is if you are a patient who's on any other medication for anything, diabetes medications, heart medications, blood thinners, birth control, right? Any other pills that you take and you add in oregano oil or reishi mushrooms or shiitake mushroom dust
Mm-hmm.
powder supplement,
Mm-hmm.
right? Typically those types of medications can be inhibitors of that CYP450 enzyme through the liver. When it inhibits that pathway, then your other medications like your blood thinners or your blood pressure medication, your diabetes medications, they don't get broken down like they should, and they build up to sometimes a toxic or even lethal level. So those supplements can be very dangerous if they are an inhibitor of those isoenzymes. They can also be dangerous if they're rapid metabolizers of those enzymes. So off the top of my head, probably St. John's wort, which is an herb that sometimes people take for anxiety or depression, that sort of thing. I
Yep.
have different patients that are on that supplement. That's a rapid metabolizer. So if you take that along with some other medications, it can very quickly break down like your blood thinner, like a Coumadin or a birth control pill. They get broken down very quickly and cleared out of your system, and then they don't work and they're not effective. And you don't even realize it.
Huh.
So I'm always very cautious about supplements for that reason. The oregano oil specifically does have antimicrobial properties, right? So it is known in some ways to kill bacteria or parasites, that sort of thing. What you have to be careful with though is that we have like, 1 trillion good bacteria species in our colon that are needed there. So oregano oil can also disrupt the good bacteria in your colon and cause a lot of intestinal distress, bloating, nausea, diarrhea, that sort of thing. And it's got some other compounds in it that it breaks down to. It has some tannins in it. It has thymol in it. Those types of medications can be pretty abrasive to the stomach lining. And those specific compounds that it breaks down into can also interfere with absorption of like copper, zinc, iron, that sort of thing. So we really have to be careful just taking it willy-nilly in the hopes that we're going to get rid of maybe a parasitic infection, or some type of tapeworm that we think that we have, that sort of thing. Really, you're much better off, actually going to your physician and getting the appropriate test to figure out, do you actually have, a parasite, a worm, that sort of thing.
Well, it was fear marketing. I mean, we were just sitting
Oh,
down
yeah.
because I asked her, because we were just like I said, as a female, do you have any questions about digestion? I thought that'd be interesting to her, and she says we got talking about this, and it was like, I said, I we have things in our stomachs to help us digest. I don't want to kill off the good things and the bad things. And
Yeah.
she just made fun of having tapeworm. It's like, because of all the things that they were going. It's like, but I understand now that you get me thinking here about y- taking these things and not knowing. I don't want to. It's funny
You don't
because
want to do more damage than good.
no, and then they show that you're flushing out all this stuff, and if I have all this stuff, like if it's going from my gut to my brain to everything else, that there's a parasite, then should be dead. You
Well,
know?
I mean, I certainly in my career have seen lots of various you know, parasitic infections. And they are diagnosed, with specific tests. And then depending on what specific parasite it is, we choose the appropriate, you know, uh, antimicrobial for that. Each
Mm-hmm.
one kind of has a different treatment for it based on what it is. But there are ways to test for it and determine that. And mushrooms themselves, in and of themselves, are great. If we're just talking about eating organic mushrooms, they're great for fiber content. They have a lot of prebiotics in them. So basically, that's the food that the good bacteria in your colon like to feed off of and eat. And the prebiotics that are in mushrooms are really good for supporting the good microbes in your gut. They can make short chain fatty acids, which are really important for keeping the lining of your gut healthy. It's just when companies like to capitalize on patients' need to maybe think that they're using an all natural product, or to easily treat themselves and order these types of supplements. That's where the problem comes in, because to get that fiber out of the mushrooms and break it down into a product, it usually requires some sort of chemical extraction or microwave extraction, or freeze drying along with chemicals, that by the time they're all done with that, to get this fiber product that's a powder that they could put in a capsule or some sort of product, it really doesn't have the same bioavailability and the known safe effects that you'd get if you just ate some some mushrooms, right? So
Yeah.
mushrooms in and of themselves are fine. What I'm leery of are all of the herbal products that are out there that we really have to be careful of.
Well, and it's interesting when you say that. I say, is a capsule better than powder? Like I take a powder vitamin for digesting, getting into my system and helping me better. It's like it's a drink I take in the morning. It has my vitamins in it instead of a pill. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I for digestive purposes, is does that, because I feel it, I mean, mentally I just think it's better for me.
So it's different depending on which types of vitamins that you're talking about, but there are a lot of different vitamins that formulation, whether it's in a powder or a liquid form, may have better and quicker bioavailability. That your body's able to, absorb it quicker, and for it to kind of, start doing its thing quicker. It's not that
Hmm.
there's anything wrong with capsules, but there are certain formulations and certain vitamins that I think people get a quicker bioavailability with powder form or with liquid form. Like
Well,
I take a magnesium supplement at night that's a powder form.
uh, see, I did, and I ran out, and now I have a couple capsules. I take magnesium at night myself, and I take a little fish oil
Yeah.
at night is usually when I take that. Um, but I'm so, would a probiotic, with this, because this is one my wife said, because we were talking about this, that probiotics and prebiotics are, do they help?
They can. They can also cause some distress, though. So there is not a clear guideline from the GI societies on probiotic usage, meaning you're not going to find a guideline that says use this probiotic at this dose for this long, like we do with prescription medications. The biggest reason for that, again, A, they're not all FDA regulated. B, most of the studies that we have out there to go off of are a combination of multiple strains of probiotics, not just one probiotic. And oftentimes it's difficult to know, is it a combination of those various probiotics that are giving those results? If not, which one is? And it's very difficult to tease that out and difficult to replicate that study's results scientifically. So we don't have clear-cut guidelines for it. In my practice, I kind of am somewhere in the middle. And if I have a patient who comes in and tells me, listen, for 20 years, I've had constipation. I've always ran on the constipated side, and I started taking this probiotic, and magically I have perfect poops every day. Well, that's hard to argue with, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think patients know their bodies better than anyone else. And when someone comes in with a story like that and they're not having any side effects and everything seems better on it, that's really hard to argue with. So I think if you don't have a lot of other health problems, you're not on a lot of other medications, and you get really good results with a certain probiotic, I think that's fine. I think probiotics serve a very helpful role when you've had to be on antibiotics, especially prolonged antibiotics that we know are wiping out the good bacteria along with whatever bad bacterial infection you had.
Mm-hmm.
I will use a very specific probiotic while I have patients on antibiotics and for some time afterwards to kind of replenish the good healthy bacteria in their gut. And I think probiotics serve a good role for that. I'm very cautious, and I do tell patients, if you're going to try a probiotic, honestly, I hate to see patients get roped into these ones that are $300 a month and have to be refrigerated and all of this nonsense. I think people get raked over the coals. You can find some very affordable ones over the counter that you get just as good of results with. So it does have certain purposes for certain people. Who I would not use a probiotic in are people who are much older, people who are immunocompromised, who maybe have cancer or who are on chemotherapy or some sort of immunosuppressive drugs.
Mm-hmm.
There are some published studies that have shown that patients come in and they're actually septic. And when we do blood cultures, what grows out is the probiotic. So
Huh.
I think that you have to be careful when people are very sick and they maybe not really, they don't have good gut health to begin with. Maybe they don't have what we call like tight junctions, good tight junctions in their colon or in their colon lining. Those would be the people I'd be worried about adding all that extra bacteria in. So I don't give it to, patients that I think are, on the sicker end or on a lot of other various medications with a lot of other health problems.
Huh. Well, that just answers some questions that I've had. But it, you kind of got me going. I mean, I have this whole list, and then when you see me come over here, I'm writing down another thing that I want to ask you. So if you see me like, what's he doing? He's writing down
You're
another thing.
taking notes.
Yeah, I am taking notes. So what's the perfect poop then? That one
Oh,
got me when.
I love this conversation. I wish so if we were in my office, every room in my practice for the hospital, I have the Bristol stool chart. So you can look that up on your phone. If I had a way to like quickly show it on my screen, I
Okay.
would. But the Bristol stool chart is a poop chart. And it basically, I have it in every room so that it shows patients what the ideal, perfect rock star poop is, right? And then it shows varying degrees of constipation and varying degrees of diarrhea kind of stools below it. And I use that in every room because it really helps to, again, break down the walls, helps with communication. It allows me to kind of give a visual aid to patients so they kind of have something tangible to kind of like look at and say, yeah, actually, I'm a 3, right? Or I'm a 6. So on a Bristol stool chart, best type of stool ideally would be a type 4. It's a soft stool. You don't have to strain. It comes out easy. It kind of goes into the water like a Olympic diver, right? It doesn't make a big splash. It's not plunking, right?
Yeah.
Uh and it's kind of like right in the middle of that chart is really what you want your stools to be: soft, easy to pass. Once they start getting a lot bulkier, harder, dried out, and certainly down when we're talking to like a type 1 stool, which would be like little rabbit pellets. That's the more constipated end of the scale. And then certainly once they become more and more loose or fragmented or actually all the way down to water, that's more towards the end of diarrhea type scale. So rockstar poop is a type 4, which is a soft, easy to pass stool.
Well, here's a question then, because sometimes when I'm out in the woods hunting or doing whatever I'm doing, and sometimes like you wait, if I wait too long, it's like I got to find a tree now, and I got to do it, and it look like a cow pooping in the in the woods. Is that because I waited too long, or is that because I'm eating differently? Do you think? You know what I mean? Like, did I wait too long to do this, and then it's just not, you, knowing that I'm going to do it sometime in the morning. So you know what I mean?
Well, is this only happening like when you're hunting or like when you're on your walk?
No, I never. Well, it doesn't happen on my walk because usually I get up and I poop in the morning and then I take off and go. So, I'm the occasional days I might have to go when I'm climbing the mountain or something, but most of the time I'm cleaned out. But it's funny how your body becomes used to this is the time you're going to go
Yeah.
mostly. So most of the time before I'm gone in the morning, I will sometimes I probably in a hurry and then I'll get back and it's still a decent bowel movement, but yeah, it's just I think
So, there's two things I would say with that, and I tell my patients this as well. So, do you drink coffee in the morning?
no, but I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do have I have a caffeine. I have a it's called Black Flag Revenge. I usually have one of those in the morning.
So it's kind of like an energy drink.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So, I will tell patients like coffee functions, in two ways to help move the bowels in the morning. So, number one, it's a hot liquid, and hot liquids kind of, help, uh, you know, propagate things along. And it's caffeine. That stimulant also helps to move the bowels. So, that caffeine is part of what's kind of getting things going.
Hmm.
The other reason why our bodies are kind of like, everybody kind of gets up in the morning and you're kind of set then, and at some point in the morning most people feel like they need to have a bowel movement. It's kind of the way God designed it. At night, your digestive system is under parasympathetic nervous control. So you kind of have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. So at night there's this whole little process going on while you're sleeping. It's pretty magical for nerds like me. It's called the it's called the MMC, migrating motor complex. So all night long while you're sleeping, your colon in your gut, it's like it's doing these tiny little inchworm contractions, moving down all of the food particles and all of the digestive products, down through the colon, so that in the morning it's kind of all moved down there and it's ready to kind of go when you're ready to go. So most people are, once they get up in the morning, and especially if they've had any sort of caffeine or, coffee stimulant, that sort of thing, it's natural that once your body's up and moving around, it's kind of a signal that, hey, time to let that those waste products out. I think probably if you are holding it too long, it's your body has a way of signaling to you it's time to let out the waste products.
Yep.
And as all of that moves down into your distal colon, down through the sigmoid and then down certainly into the rectum, sometimes if you're trying to hold it for too long, this, kind of like a cramping will, those waves
Oh
of
yeah.
contraction will start to happen. And then it's not quite as a controlled release, and that might be what you're getting when you're out in the woods holding it too long.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that though, because when I get up in the morning, I have to go, like I said, but like I said, I don't know if I've needed to wait a little bit longer. And then what I do is I have a drink of water, and then I have this is interesting because I have a magic mind because and then I go on my walk, and then I come back and I take my vitamins and I do that black flag, and then and then I go to work. But somewhere in between there is usually when if I do have to go again. But most of the time I don't. But it's interesting because you know, uh, I was just thinking about what you were talking about when your gut is going back and forth. Is when you go to sleep at because I read this that if you eat later when you're out like out in the woods, your body is digesting this and it will keep your body warmer because of the it's digesting. But that's what I've read. I'm just saying. But I also wonder, is that good for your? What's the latest you'd want to eat? And I'm not saying you're out partying or whatever. I don't do that. I'm too old to do that anymore anyway. But I'm saying your gut. Is there a if you don't want to have a stomach ache, you shouldn't eat. I mean, just saying, you shouldn't eat late, is what I'm saying. You know where I'm going with this? Sometimes I need a
Yeah.
translator.
Well, I don't know so much about the homeostasis of it and as far as like thermal regulation,
Yeah.
but uh, you can cause a lot of symptoms at night by eating too late or lying down quickly. First and foremost, what people get if they eat too late and then lay down is they get heartburn or acid reflux, right? Because you haven't given what's in your stomach time to move through. So then you lay down at night. Now you take gravity out of the picture, right? So you have this little sphincter muscle at the bottom part of your esophagus where your esophagus meets the stomach. It's called the lower esophageal sphincter, or LES, which for the most part is supposed to be closed, right? So the way
Yep.
that God designed this is your esophagus is just a long tube of muscle that's meant to push the food bolus down. When it gets to the bottom, that little sphincter muscle then should open and relax, let the food drop in the stomach, and then it should close again to keep what's in the stomach down in the stomach. The acid and the digestive enzymes that are in your stomach were not meant to come up into your esophagus. They're caustic to the esophagus. When you lay down at night, now you don't have gravity on your side. And in people who have acid reflux, that little sphincter muscle opens and relaxes, and then what's in your stomach comes up into your esophagus. People then get heartburn. They wake up with a bad taste in their mouth or coughing. Sometimes people get sneezing. They even can get, earaches. It can bring on a whole
Mm.
set of symptoms. And most of that has to do with upper symptoms, not so much lower, because all of that is still in your upper GI tract if you just eat and then lay down kind of late at night. So we usually tell patients who have heartburn frequently or heartburn at night not to eat 3 hours before they lay down at night, and to actually raise up the head of their bed underneath the mattress. So you get these like foam wedges that you can put
Mm-hmm.
underneath your mattress, or a couple big wood blocks to actually raise it up by 30 degrees or more, so that you have gravity back on your side now to kind of help keep what's in your stomach down in your stomach.
And and I've heard also, it drives me crazy when I see these people that are eating Tums like they're candy. You aren't doing your gut any good by doing that. You need to fix yourself so you don't have to eat the Tums or the anything. Maybe I'm being harsh on people, but that's when you're self-medicating like that, it's not helping you at all.
So I would say, again, I've done this for 20 years. I would say the number one thing that I treat on a daily basis is GERD or acid reflux. And then it goes down from there as far as bowel changes, constipation, diarrhea, that sort of thing. But acid reflux and heartburn is so common, and people often don't realize. So that little sphincter muscle, the things that will make it open and relax when it shouldn't, therefore giving people heartburn, are caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, chocolate, peppermint, greasy, fatty, fried foods, carbonated beverages. Those things in and of themselves literally cause that muscle to relax and can increase acid reflux. And then foods that are more acidic to begin with, like tomato sauces, orange juice, lemon juice, that sort of thing. When that does come up, it's obviously more of an irritant. I think a lot of times patients don't realize what they're eating or drinking and how much that's playing into their symptoms. So usually the first thing I try to do are dietary or lifestyle modifications with patients. Um, you know, if you have a lot of abdominal weight that you're carrying around, or you've developed a hiatal hernia at the top part of your stomach, that also plays into acid reflux. And oftentimes, if patients are able to lose weight, especially around their abdomen, they'll see a big improvement in heartburn and acid reflux as well. So I usually try that first before we move into the realm, of anti-acid medications. But
Yep.
certainly, if patients are popping Tums, or over-the-counter antacids on a daily
Yep.
basis like that, they really should see a gastroenterologist. Because the other thing that we worry about, if you've had chronic acid reflux, when I say chronic, even maybe more than 5 years, if you're male, if you're a smoker, if you're carrying some extra weight around your abdomen, all of that puts you at risk for something called Barrett's esophagus. Those are cellular changes that happen in the esophagus because of that acid exposure. And a percentage of Barrett's can go on to turn into esophageal cancer. So we take that pretty serious. And if people
Yep.
are popping Tums on a regular basis, they probably need to see a GI specialist. And then in that case, we do a scope from above, an upper endoscopy. Again, you're asleep for it, similar to a colonoscopy. It doesn't require prep. It's pretty quick, takes about 10 minutes or so to do, but that allows us to go in and get a really good look at the esophagus to make sure that there's no damage there.
Huh. Well, I do agree. I mean, it's because I can't Italian food after 7 o'clock at night with, if you say you went out, that tomato, like you were saying, the
Yeah.
tomato sauce paste, or it kills me. That's the only thing that really kills me, and I've learned not, like, if I'm going to have anything like that, usually it's at a lunch or something like that, where I got a full day to hopefully digest things, because otherwise it kills me sometimes at night. But I've learned that, and it's fixed. I don't have those problems anymore either.
Well, because you're my friend and you've had such a positive influence on my life, I'll give you a little tip. So something that's over the counter, that's easy to take, it's pretty safe. In fact, it's probably the main thing I would use if someone was pregnant and had acid reflux symptoms. We use this in those cases, is called Gaviscon. So it's an over the counter product. It's, again, pretty cool for nerds like me. It's an alginate. So it works differently than all the other antacids. What an alginate will do is you take it, it comes in a liquid form or a pill form. It's meant to be taken after one of those trigger meals. So let's say you
Oh.
really want to go out for lasagna or spaghetti or pizza or whatever, but you know you're going to pay for it. After you've had that meal, you take the Gaviscon. When you take it, it's going to foam up in your stomach. It coats the stomach, and then it creates this foam layer that rises to the top of the stomach, and it floats there, and it creates like a little foam sealing barrier at the top of your stomach floating there, that then makes it very difficult for that liquid acid to penetrate up through that foam layer and get up into your esophagus. It also has some anti-acid properties to it as well, but the actual alginate in that foam layer is a really good physiologic barrier, and it's meant to be taken after one of those meals that you typically pay the price for.
Yeah, because it's the tomatoes too. I mean, and I love tomatoes,
Yep.
but I mean, it's one of those things that it's interesting to me that I can eat Mexican spicy food in that aspect, but it's the tomatoes that kill me at that time of the night. So thank you. That's cool. So learn something
I'm
new every
lucky
day.
that I don't get heartburn, and thank goodness, because I love hot spicy food. The hotter the better. I'm talking like the places that you go to that you have to sign the waivers. That's me.
No, my gosh. Because
Oh
here's what I
yeah,
figure.
that's me.
Because I figure I'm not hot, I'm spicy, but I
Yeah.
love my onions and garlic and all that kind of stuff, but the hot, that's not.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
We're talking, ghost pepper.
Woo!
Yeah. Yep, all the good stuff. Devil's tongue. The hotter the
Oh,
better. So
oh
I'm
my
I'm lucky that
gosh.
I don't get heartburn, because
Me-
I don't know if I just don't have any taste buds or what. Mike makes fun of me. Because he's one of those guys that he barely dips his finger in it. And he immediately tears start coming down, and his ears turn red and his nose turns red and he's snotting
Ah.
everywhere.
No, that's interesting. That's funny. That's funny. So,
Yeah. Nope. I like the hot, super hot stuff, hot spicy.
woo, I'll be darned. So, we'll keep on going down my list of questions here.
Bring it
D-
on.
Does intermittent fasting have anything to do hurt your digestive system?
No. Intermittent fasting can be very helpful to help regulate your weight, to help people who have diabetes. It really helps all together with what we call this, like, dysmetabolic syndrome. So we know that obesity, and again, especially central obesity, so extra weight around your abdomen, right? So the real, I guess, what are guidelines that you'd say now, the numbers that we're talking about, you are considered obese if your BMI is greater than 30 and your waist circumference is considered dangerous or unhealthy if it's greater than 35 for a female, greater than 40 for a male. And what happens when you accumulate all of that extra kind of subcutaneous fat around your belly is it signals to the inside of your body to also lay down what we call visceral fat. So viscera meaning organs. And that means that fat is going to start storing and laying down around your heart, your kidneys, your liver, your intestines, everything on the inside. And that visceral fat on the inside is very sensitive to hormones, and it can drive inflammation, it can drive heart disease, it can drive diabetes, and it can drive fatty liver disease, and it can have negative effects on the entire body. So we know that trying to keep a healthy weight and losing that extra abdominal fat really makes a big difference. And that's easier said than done. Um, Pretty much the only diet that I would recommend to patients that really has been proven as far as our literature that you're going to see people get behind, at least in my field, is the Mediterranean diet. So I typically will recommend that to patients. I will recommend at least 30 minutes of exercise a day for 5 days a week. And that should include aerobic activity and also some weight training. That strength training, weight training can help make a big difference as far as increasing muscle mass, metabolism, and also helping to make your bones strong. And then I add in intermittent fasting. And intermittent fasting can be different for everyone. Some people are able to do a timed intermittent fasting each day, right? Meaning you pick your times that fit best for your schedule. So it may be that, you don't really care much about breakfast, so your body doesn't really get hungry till 11 a.m. And then between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. is when you're going to eat your meals. You're not going to eat anything after 7 p.m., right? That's
Yep.
caloric, really. Again, until 11 a.m. the next day. So your intermittent fasting may be a daily thing that you do that's just in a timed interval of when you get your caloric intake in.
Hmm.
And that's really helpful to reset the body as to what it's supposed to be doing. And when you're not taking that food in, it forces your body to kind of use those excess fat stores as a fuel source because you're not taking things in that interval in between. The other way that people use intermittent fasting, and I will see this happen a lot, like in the obesity clinics around here at some of our local hospitals around us that have obesity programs, when they're really trying to make breakthroughs with the weight, once they've instituted all the things I've talked about, they will add in a 1 day a week complete fasting. So, you pick the day that you think would be easy enough for you to do that. Most people probably aren't going to pick a Friday or a Saturday, not a weekend, but a
Hmm.
day that you're not that busy, and that you're maybe at work and you have other things going on. You eat no solid food on that day. Obviously, you're still drinking water and you can have coffee, tea, as long as you're not putting sugar in it or anything like that. But you might have one day out of the week that's a complete fast day. And that can be really good for the body as far as maintaining your weight. And there's really also a lot of good research out there showing how a fasting state can help cancer patients. Cancer thrives on glucose, right? And
Yep.
there's some real science behind a quote unquote starving cancer and figuring out ways to make a doable, practical fasting state in patients who are cancer patients as well. There's a PhD doctor. His name's Dr. Walter Longo. He's originally out of Italy. He's an Italian scientist, and he does a lot with the Cancer Institute and nutrition and fasting. And you should look up his website. And he's got various webinars that you can watch that are really helpful with information on fasting. So yeah, I'm all about intermittent fasting, however it works for you. It doesn't have to be cut and dry.
Well, I've always argued that throughout our history, people didn't know when they were going to eat anyway. So it's not like we
Mm-hmm.
decided we're going to have breakfast between 6 and 8, and then we're going to have lunch at 11 to 1, and then we're going to have supper at night or whatever. I always argued that fact because I go on. I feel like when I do a fast, sometimes I do a 24 hour. I've never done more than that. I mean, I know some people that have done a 72 hour and that, but I'm not that person. But I always feel better in the end because then you're not, I feel that I'm empty and I can start putting the good stuff back into me because I've told people like I'm probably an 80-20, 90-10 staying with what I should eat, but I, I'm
Sure.
a I'm an ice creamaholic, and I do keep that away. And you know, if you have to go get it, then you probably don't have it, but I will do that. Um, there's other things that the Mediterranean is tough on me because I'm a red meat eater. This is
Yeah.
wild red meat, but that's all I eat really is wild red meat. And so that's I mean, I, I, I I'm gonna that's I'm not a big bird or fish eater. That's just me. I just don't. I like to have my elk, deer, and whatever else I might have, or So no, it is so since we are not fasting right now at the moment, is cravings in the brain or is it in the like? I want to taste that. You know what I mean? Like you're going to
Yeah. So
say I want to go have
cravings,
the
yeah,
I want to go have
there's
that ice
different
cream.
things that yeah, so there's different things that go into that though. If you are deficient in or you haven't taken in enough carbohydrates or sodium, or that sort of thing, that can be part of what signals, a craving for a certain food is maybe you really haven't gotten enough of that for all of the cellular processes that need to take place that day. But there are other chemicals that are in an intimate loop between your stomach and your digestive system and your brain that are responsible for hunger and satiety, right? So there's you have chemicals that are produced, or hormones, I say, you could call them, that are produced, that are responsible for you feeling full. And when those get to a certain level or they drop to a certain point, they send signals to the brain to kind of give off the feeling like, hey, I'm hungry, or hey, I've had enough, right? And there's a whole world of medications and surgeries for weight loss that help to target those various chemicals in the stomach, in the brain, and to help to turn off those hunger cues or satiety cues.
Yeah, that was just one of those things I thought of when I was today. Is like I wondered if because I understand your body will crave salt or your body will crave something else because they might need it too. But that well that's interesting to me because that answers my question too. I was told as a baby, but here's one too, and because I can't remember myself being a baby, of course, but anyway, but I was allergic to milk. But did I was when you're talking about 50, well, talking 58 years ago, then if we're talking about that, or was I allergic or was I intolerant? Because like I said, I'm an ice creamaholic, which then produces, like if I eat too much, I limit myself But if I don't limit myself, then you get gassy, of course, and nobody likes that.
Well, I mean, it all depends. In my field, farts are funny. So, I mean, it all depends on who you're hanging out with and who your friends are, Rick. I mean, if we come visit you, feel free to pass on the
Okay.
gas you want. I'm probably going to have some funny jokes or giggle or snicker a little bit about it, but um, so there's two different things that we're talking about here. So there's a milk protein allergy that is significant and no joke. And when infants have that, or children have it, it's a real issue because that can cause a whole cascade really of an allergic response, right? And immune mediated allergic response in your body, not just intolerance, but we're talking swelling, right? Or
Hmm.
respiratory distress or rashes or what have you as an allergic response in their body. So there's a milk protein allergy, but then there's lactose intolerance. I also see this on a daily basis in my practice. If you think about it, the way God designed it is that we all really were supposed to develop lactose intolerance at some point. Because think about it, we were meant to breastfeed as infants on mother's
Hmm.
milk. And then, maybe, I don't know, at about a year old or so, once all of our teeth had come in, we transitioned over to solid food, right? We were never meant to breastfeed our whole lives.
Yep.
So, our ability to break down milk sugars, the enzymes that our body was producing to break down the sugars in milk, were slowly supposed to taper off because we weren't going to continue to breastfeed for the rest of our lives. But we obviously figured out a long time ago that we could take other animals' milk that was meant for their offspring and use it for food products.
Hmm.
Some people develop lactose intolerance very quickly in childhood, kind of as it was programmed to do. Other people, through evolution and all the years gone by, have slowly been able to adapt and continue to take in dairy. But typically, you'll start to see in your 20s or 30s that maybe there's some part of dairy that you don't quite tolerate. There's like 4 or 5 different milk sugars. And typically, what will happen is patients will come to me and they're like, I don't know. I mean, I have no problem drinking milk at all. But man, if I eat cheese on pizza, I'm right in the bathroom quick with diarrhea or bloating. Or maybe they have no problems with cheese, but they start to notice if they eat ice cream, they get a lot of gas or bloating or diarrhea. And little by little, there's different dairy products and milk sugars that people don't tolerate. As they start to get older, we really do, a lot of us start to develop some lactose intolerance. And that's not a true milk protein allergy. It's just lactose intolerance. And your way around that is to either A, avoid it, or B, you can use a lactate product that you can get them anywhere, grocery store, drugstore, Walmart.
Yep.
They literally are the little enzymes that your body's not making anymore to break down milk sugars that come in a little pill form, little tablet form. And anytime that you really want to enjoy ice cream, if you thought it was going to give you a lot of distress, you could use some of these little lactate pills before you eat the dairy product. And that can kind of help to curb off those symptoms. So I usually will tell my patients that have lactose intolerance that, really don't want to give up ice cream or some special treat that they like to have, a lactate product can be helpful for that.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I usually like I said, I know it's not eating a half a gallon, it's eating the 2 scoops and I'm good, but in the farting part is my wife always says you couldn't have done it outside, you had to wait to get in the vehicle.
Yeah, right. Everybody else had to suffer for it.
Yeah. So no,
So,
that this
I've always been a truck girl, right? So
yeah.
I've loved trucks ever since I was younger, and I used to go to all the modified semi truck pulls with my uncle. It was like one of my favorite things to do. So I couldn't wait till I finally made enough money on my own to go get a nice truck. So a few years ago, I got to go pick out this beautiful white sparkly F-350. I mean, she is just like my princess of a truck. It's gorgeous. I love it. I can drive it through anything, right? And
Yep.
I brought that truck home and I told Mike and I told my kids, no one farts in this truck. There's no partying allowed in this truck. You can't eat in this truck. Whatever you do, nothing comes out of your body in my truck. So, but that only lasted for about 2 weeks, obviously, and then everyone made it a point to leave all of their junk in my truck. But
I hear you. So I could ask you many more questions, but tell me, like, what are your, you know, you inspire me every morning too when I see you like things or, you know, some of your posts or whatever else. And so what, tell me about Heather. I've talked to Mike twice. I need to learn about Heather.
so I'm from a little small town in Ohio. My parents got divorced when I was 5. So for the most part, I was raised by my mom as a single mom, and I had a pretty strange relationship with my dad as a kid and as a teenager. It's much better now as an adult. I have a half brother and a half sister to him and my stepmom, who I absolutely adore. My half sister and my half brother, they're just great people, and I'm get to spend time with them and their kids now that we're adults. That's a little bit easier, but for the most part, grew up with my mom, very, very close with her parents, my grandparents, and that's who I was mentioning earlier. My grandma was, my best friend growing up, and very close with, especially her one brother, my uncle Wade. He kind of stepped in. Really was a, what I felt like was a father figure to me growing up, and so they really raised me with a really strong work ethic and kind of if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem in life. And it's pretty black and white, really. You can
Yeah.
apply that to anything. And I still, that trickles down and I teach my kids that. That can be something as significant as, listen, you don't steal, don't take things that aren't yours, right? Help other people that are less fortunate than you, reach out to people, show grace, to as small as put your cart away at the grocery store, right? Don't
Yeah.
leave it sitting out for other people to do. If you see a piece of trash, pick it up.
I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Don't Die Rusty podcast. And if you would be so kind to give us a review, a like, a share, and a subscribe, that'd be wonderful, and I would greatly appreciate it. And if you would like to follow us on Facebook, we're at Don't Die Rusty. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, it's at Don't Die Rusty. And if you would like to get in contact with me, it's rick@don'tdierusty.com. And I just want to say I appreciate everybody listening, and as usual, keep chasing your dreams, being the best you, and don't die rusty.